career's had many phases. Trained as a sociologist, a little bit of an economist, and my early career was pretty much just social science research. But as my career has evolved, it became quite interdisciplinary, and then in the last decade or more, some of my scholarship has really focused on my role on projects being facilitating participatory modes of doing work and evaluating and thinking critically about what works, what doesn't work. This project I just got a couple of years ago, it's the pinnacle of a lot of the stuff I've been talking about. So we're really trying to walk the walk. We're trying to make or test whether a deeply farmer-driven project can change the world in the area of regenerative agriculture. And the motivation is, I'm old, and I've worked my whole career on farmer conservation behavior. Robin spent now a number of years on conservation behavior. And I'd say Robin and I are both a little frustrated that the needle hasn't moved faster. That we know there's good things out there, and it's really hard to get people to change their behavior. And we sold to USDA for the price of $10 million. You should invest in a project that lets farmers design their own research on conservation with the guidance and support of the universities, because that's the way that we might change their minds. We might learn some new things, substantive functionality, but we're also going to be speaking a language, and the results will be coming from a place that farmers may view differently and maybe trust more. So we are doing a lot of on-farm research under practical working farm conditions that's been designed and is, at least in large part, evaluated by our farmer collaborators. And the scientist's role is to support that. So how's it going? Well, there's a graphic image. I'm a curler. This is like the curling target you have on the ice, Winter Olympics coming up. The core of the project is Tier 1. That's where we're supporting a network of farms that are doing on-farm research. We're also studying the people surrounding the farmers and the policy and market drivers, because farmers don't act in isolation. But the core, the heart and soul of this project is farmer design research. So what have the farmers chosen to do? We have 9 groups, 5 from Ohio. One of them is a bunch of specialty crop growers in Dayton, small scale, low tech, and they're just trying to figure out a cover crop system that works for small scale, low tech, urban farming, specialty crops. The next one's a bunch of really traditional corn and soybean farmers in Plain City, and they chose to study fungicide use and whether it's worth it to use fungicides at all, or whether it's worth it to pay for higher price, higher quality, cutting edge fungicides versus generic fungicides, which the higher price stuff only has to be put on once, the others can require multiple passes. And for them, it's a question of economics, but there's some really interesting environmental dimensions. We got a group up in Wayne County of organic farmers that are very interested in whether or not mowing their clover and peas, which they have in rotation because they're organic farmers, they need to manage fertility and weeds using crop rotations, whether it's okay to harvest that versus mowing it or plowing it down. And those that have dairy cows, and a lot of these guys have dairy cows, want to get the economic value, and they wonder if they're losing some of that fertility, soil health, weed control benefits. Same county, a bunch of conventional dairy farmers doing what a whole lot of dairy farmers are talking about in Ohio and beyond, which is grow forage crop as a cover crop in the winter very intensively to get the maximum amount of forage and feed. Often cover crops are managed just to bare minimum to meet the needs of a conservation program. And so they don't fertilize them very much. If they love to see something a little bit grow, but they're kind of glad when it doesn't grow too much because it's easier to plant into. These guys are maximizing production. And so their trial they came up with is contrasting that, which a couple of them are already doing. All of them are now going to try that intensive triticale winter forage versus a conventional cover crop, which they're just managing as different seeding rates, different fertilization practices, and try to see what the benefit is for yield. Now, some cover crop programs won't pay you if you harvest your cover crop and feed it to your cows. And these guys are pissed off, and they want to say what we're doing is just as good for the environment and soil health, but they don't know for sure. So we're going on a 4-year ride to find out if that's the case. We have finally a big group of large farmers up in the Northwest, your heart of the Corn Belt, looking at different approaches to cover cropping. They're already on board with conventional cover cropping with a single species. They're trying to figure out how to diversify cover crops because the research suggests that if you can diversify your cover crops, it's much, much more advantageous for the goals they're trying to achieve. But it's hard to do, so they're learning with us how to do that. We're also working in Missouri. We've got two groups that are both grazers, a group of sheep and goat people that are looking at seeding cover crops into established pasture, and their whole questions were, can we treat seed in different ways to get the seed to germinate better? We got another cover crop trial with a bunch of grain growers, and we've got another specialty crop cover crop trial in the Boot Heel down in the Delta that's asking questions. So our approach was let farmers be involved as much as possible. Unlike those first two projects, farmers were involved when we wrote the proposal. And if I drink my Kool-Aid or I take my medicine about participatory research, I should do this more often, right? Like I'm tired of going to farmers saying, hey, I got this money. Would you be willing to be on my project? Rather than, what project do you want to do? Can we work together to formulate it? So this was that. As a result, though, we didn't define what the practices were absolutely going to be until the project's funded. So we were rejected for 2 straight years because we didn't outline our experimental design. And like the whole point of the project is that comes when we get funded. They believed us the 3rd year, but we had to have a lot of demonstrated ability of how this has worked other places, and that the farmers were behind it to get that through. We formed a farmer leadership team that has full power equal to our university project management team in making important decisions about the project. Those farmer leaders are also the seeds of our farmer research nodes, where they met with our team and determined what their treatments were going to be, what fields they're going to work on, what outcomes we should measure. And it's an adaptive process. We've been through one field season. We're revisiting those decisions going into a 2nd year. And we don't want to just change course for changing course's sake, because there's value in doing the same thing through a lot of different weather seasons. But we've learned in a couple of cases that we want to pivot before we get any farther down the road. Scientists provided input into field selection, treatment design, measurement methods. They're doing the sampling and analysis and packaging results. And staff, I'll call them, who are the heart and soul of this project, manage these meetings, maintain relationships. And we have several people. We have a dedicated person in each state, plus the project director, who are involved in just helping the farmer-led piece work. And then we have an external advisory board. Lessons learned. So it's early days. We just got through our first field season. I'd say these are my unsophisticated, unsystematic conclusions. I do have an objective on the project to systematically study things on whether it works. But I'd say that for the scientists, the successful things I hear about is their excitement at being able to work with farmers who are motivated. So for those scientists who are hoping to do some work with actual farmers, this has been a gateway for them. And they are involved in hearing and learning about what farmers are already doing. In some cases, they didn't really know the depth to which farmers are processing decisions about cover crops. And as I've said, and they never hear me, it's not that farmers, for example, in Ohio, don't know about cover crops or don't know that they're good for soil health. When we survey them, they all know that. There are other things that are part of the practical implementation of a practice like that that are keeping them all from doing it. And it's this work that's diving into how to innovate that idea of a practice in different ways to make it work better for actual farmers. The tensions on our project, which we're still going to, we'll probably struggle forever, but we're working hard on, is because the scientists don't have experimental control, and because we didn't force the same treatment on all 9 nodes, it's going to be harder to publish. And if you had a single graduate student assigned to this as their entire master's or dissertation, they're chomping and anxious at being able to do things that the institution will reward as valid, graduate student research or faculty, or we have young faculty who need to publish or perish, right? And so this style of work it's written about, but it's just so true. It's hard to make mesh with the incentive systems that we reward people for. So I always advise my colleagues, if you do participatory work, have it be one part of your portfolio. It's not easy and moves slow to do this work as the core of what you do. Now, I would love to live in a world, and that's my last slide, in which we have jobs that are that, as well as jobs that are traditional mode 1 scientists, but that's not yet our institution. Farmers, I think, are really excited to have been taken seriously. And when we first met with them, almost to a T, every group of farmers sat there in the very first meeting and asked us what we wanted them to do. And we were laughing about it. We'd look at them and go, I don't know, what do you want to do? And there'd be long silences. And eventually they'd start revving their engines and they'd get going. And they were great at coming up with spitballing research ideas and treatment ideas and recognizing things I thought I might have to explain about the limitations and disadvantages or advantages of different designs and complexities. Like, keep it simple if you want to get an answer. You have to have contrast, and you have to think about what are the drivers of the outcomes you're measuring. But I think they were really, they now feel like, I think for the most part, it's their project, and they're actively looking for results. Now, all the other projects I've had, they've been interested in the results, but nothing like this, where they're knocking on our door. And I've been on projects that weren't as participatory. I've evaluated participatory research where I show up and ask the farmer, so what's the research question? What are you excited about? And they're like, oh, we don't know. Like, that's Ohio State University, or that's this other university's project. And we're giving them access to our farm. We're proud to be part of it. On our project, that's not true. The tensions, though, are to get the farmers actually to believe that they can do it. We've all, just like scientists have a mode of operating and a reward system, farmers too, who've been involved with the university before, know what that looks like, and it doesn't look like this. And so they go into those meetings expecting us to give them more instruction and direction. And it is a slow learning process for them as well to figure out how this greater responsibility can fit into their lives. And we spend so much time investing in building trust and reminding people that this is a farmer-led project, both farmers and scientists. That's where the staff come in. All right, so final reflections. The typology, that paper that you're all gonna read, tells us that your choices, if you all think it's good, if you get a chance to do a participatory project, maybe use this as a rubric to think about why you're doing it and how you can make some choices about design that'll help you achieve the reasons for why you're doing it. Maybe you take that from today. And that some settings are going to be easier to do it than other settings. So if you realize it's not working because of the situation you're in, don't force it, right? Because you have to have resources, you have to have support, you have to have rewards for this to work. And that can be helpful if you are intentional about getting those. And in practice, it's really difficult to overcome our traditional ways of operating and innovating and doing research. And success is going to require, I think in the long run, reinventing the universities or reinventing the innovation platforms or thinking about, and our project promises, if nothing else, to be a laboratory to try out some slightly more radical approaches that could then be the lessons from influence future investments that some of the research portfolio could go towards. Because I truly believe that as this style of research is going to be a piece of the solution to the adoption gap. So, all right, I talked too long, but there's a link to the paper. That's it.